All right, 50 more seconds until the break ends. All right. 10 more seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. And let's go ahead. We're going to record the lesson for Docker Compose, which to me, Docker Compose is where Docker goes from like sort of being tedious and like, it's a lot of work. Do I really have to like, oh, okay. Now I can have my coworkers that they don't even need to learn Docker anymore. Like they don't even need to run a command. It's just like it just works. I guess like they need to run a command, but I don't even know what the command does. Like it just works. So let's go ahead and let's get this recording going. Let's go with the recording, something like that. Words are hard. We now have everything set up where we're able to dev with a team, with Docker, in networks, with our volumes. Everything seems to be good. And again, we don't really have a problem, but that command that we need to run, we need to create our two containers. We need to make sure that they're in the networks. We might be tempted to script it, to write like a really basic shell script to launch everything up together and just do it. But there's a better way. Docker actually provides a system for basically scripting multiple containers and having them run in their own networks automatically. And it's called Docker Compose. Now, Docker Compose uses a YAML file to basically configure it. We don't need to write code to tell Docker how to set up everything. We just write a configuration file. Now, the Compose file is, again, going to be at the root of our application. Let's just put it right next to where our Docker file is. And creating this file, it's just going to be compose.yaml. And VS Code sees that it's a compose file because it puts, this time, a red whale next to it. Now, a quick heads up, if you see any other tutorials that tell you that you need to use a docker-compose YAML file, it's most likely a very old version of Docker Compose, because we haven't needed like a docker-compose in quite a while. So something to be aware of. There is a lot of history to Docker and also Docker Compose. Also, Docker Compose, it comes just with Docker. You don't need to install everything else. It just is already there as long as you've installed Docker a normal way. Okay, so what do we do in here? Well, there's a reference file for this as well. So if we go to our docker.com references, under API reference, compose file reference, compose specification, we're going to start over here in overview. All right, so what do we put in here? Well, over here on the left, we get to sort of see our root level things that we can put. The first thing is we might be tempted to use like a version at the top level, but it's there for backwards compatibility. So like if you have a previous version that needed to be like moved over, that version can stay in there. It's not going to be read by Docker Compose. It's just going to be pretty much ignored. You can put whatever you want in there and it doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with our services. And VS Code, because we've installed the Docker extension, is going to help us out a lot here. So we can just do services. and whatever the service we want. Now we have two services here. We have our database and the Express app. So we're going to write database here, and these are going to be objects. They're going to have stuff under it, and we're going to have, we'll call it an app for example. It doesn't really matter. Now inside of services, we have to like now configure it what to do run on. Now if I'm on a Mac, so I can do Command, I think I, and it gives me all the things that I can possibly do here. These are all listed in the under services on the right. Now, the first thing we want to do is build what we have up here. So in database, we want it to come from an image from Docker Hub. So we're going to use image here, and then it's going to be the image name. So we know that this is going to be Postgres. And then what version of Postgres this is going to be? Let's take a look. So if I do Docker images, Docker images. What Docker images do we have for Postgres? We're just using the latest one, it looks like. So that's perfectly fine. We can continue using the latest one here. I'll just be specific about it. Postgres latest. For app, if I want to do the equivalent thing, well, we have a Docker file, so we're going to use that. So I want to, instead of image, we're going to build, and then give it the path of where the Docker file is, which is dot. If we have multiple Docker files or Docker files in different locations, we can use the reference file, which has a long form, which we can tell it like, okay, go find the Docker file over here, or like give it different options or something else. We don't have to worry about that as long as you're keeping a simple Docker file. All right, that's, well, at least creating the image here. Next up, we can, our app needs to wait for the database to be done before we create it, because we want, well, it needs a database, right? So under app, we can do a depends on, and then the name of a service. And the name of the service is database. Now there's a long version of this. This is the short version, and I don't want the short version. I want the long version. So we're going to do database. And then are you going to, nah, so you're not going to help me out. So we're going to have to go to the documentation here and go find depends on. There it is. We want the long syntax here. So I usually just go to the examples here. So we have depends on the service that we're looking for. It's an object. And then I want condition service healthy, because I want to make sure that it's a healthy database, that it's really up. Because what happens here in the compose file is that it starts the containers from top to bottom. So it wants to start database first and then go to app, that's the right order, but it runs them asynchronously. It doesn't wait for the database to be truly up before it launches the app. It launches like, it starts database and then immediately starts app afterwards. That's not what we want. We want to wait until the database is up and running and active before we run the, before we even start running the app service. And we can do that here. So DB condition service healthy. So this is gonna be condition service healthy. Okay. Now restart true is telling it like, if you're not healthy, go ahead and restart automatically, which there's no reason we don't have that. If like, for example, the database suddenly just stops working, we might want it to restart for us. Let's see. I am going to not worry about that though. Okay, so we don't need a depends on for the database because there's nothing for it to depend on. We want it to be the first thing, so it just launches and runs. So perfect. Next up, environment variables. Well, we know we have some environment variables for database, and we have two choices for this. We can do an env file. So if we have like a .env file or a, we can name it whatever we want. We can just do env file and then the file name. In fact, we can do multiple env files and grab them. It will grab them, sort of combine them together and make them available to the database. This is perfect if you have true secrets that you want to get ignored to make sure they don't work their way into like your GitHub or GitLab or wherever you're hosting the code. In our case, however, we don't really care about this because this is dev information, and it's not like they're not real. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the longer version, which is environment. And this is similar to what we see in the Docker file. We have name and value. And if we go and take a look at how we launch our app, so that was Docker run. Let's go find our database. Yeah, Postgres password. So here that is. If I copy you and paste you in there, we now see Postgres password equals keyboard cat. I don't need another environment variable, but if I do, I just add another dash here. We do need two environment variables for our app though. So let's go ahead and set those up. So environment, we know we want the port, and we want this port to be, well, 3000. And actually, you know what? I don't think I need to set the environment variables here because they're already set in the Docker file. So this is, we don't need to override you. You're actually fine already. Let's see. If, however, we did change the Postgres password, we would need to update and override the environment variable here. Okay, next up. Now we mentioned that we want to wait for the database to be up and healthy. One caveat here is that the Postgres container or image doesn't include a health check on it automatically. So we're gonna have to add our own. Now, Docker Compose lets us do that. If a container or an image doesn't have one automatically, we can just now do a health check and it just sets this up for us right here. This health check is going to be a little bit different compared to the one we have in the Docker file. For example, this test here is this first thing is to say, okay, what type it is going to be. We want this to be a command that runs inside the container. So it's a CMD. Then we want, in this case, I want to run PSQL, which is a way to connect to and run a command inside of a Postgres database from inside and remember, this is running in the container. So PSQL is going to be there. And then the rest of it is going to be very similar to that command that we ran in the Docker file. So it's this array where every option, everything with a space in it is going to be a new item in this array. So -L, we want -U for which the user is going to be. And then also the user that we're attempting to log in as. And then I think L is listing out the databases. So like, as long as you have a database to list out, this will be fine. Interval. So right now this is set to 1 minute, 30 seconds by default. Let's change this to be a little bit shorter. How about 30 seconds? Timeout. Let's make our timeout 5 seconds. So wait for 5 seconds and then go. Retries, we're going to set this down to 3. And our start period, let's only wait 5 seconds for this. Okay, so hit save. We now have a health check for our Postgres database container. Let's see, exposing ports. Now, we don't need to expose any ports for the database service. Those ports are going to be available to the app automatically. Like, they're going to be in the same network and it's just going to work out. The app, however, we do need to expose to our host system. So we want to use expose here, and then we can just do an array of multiple ports. and I want port 4000. Oh, it's not exposed. I want ports. That should normally give me, there it is. Okay, ports. And then we're going to have the exact same, this is the exact same thing as if we did the -p command with the Docker run. So we're going to have a host port colon the container port. Now we know that the container port is 3000. So we're going to want something outside of it. Now we've done a bunch of other ports on 3000, like 20 and 22. So just to make sure we're not even close to that, we're going to choose 4001 locally to 3000 internally there. And then volumes. So we know that we want to have a data volume for our database, so we can have persistent data even if we have to recreate the container. And the way we can create a volume automatically is with a new root level object called volumes. And in here, we're just going to have what the volume is going to be named. So let's call it just maybe like database volume. And now I'm giving it a colon here, and I'm giving it no extra information. If you go in and take a look at the documentation for database volumes, there's several things you can set here, but the defaults are pretty good and will work with what you probably want most of the time. So I'm just gonna leave it created here with nothing in it. I know that looks a little bit weird. If you don't have the colon though, it won't work. And we're going to, in database here, we want to set up the volumes, and we want the volume name container path. And remember, we call this database volume. So we're going to do database volume colon, and then we have to figure out, where do we put this? Well, we put this under that var lib Postgres QL data. And there, we've set up the data volume to now store our Postgres data. We want the same thing for our app, but instead of a data volume, we want this to mount our local directory so we can update the code in VS Code and then have it automatically run in there. And we're going to do the same volumes, but the different method. Now it's going to be host path, so we can just do dot, and we want to go into /code. So exactly the same thing that we did before. And that should be done. That should be it. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it works. Now the command for this is going to be docker space compose. So remember, it's docker space compose. If you ever see any documentation for the docker -compose, again, that's the old version of docker compose. So docker space compose up, and then we have to tell it to wait, because it's not good enough to say like, hey, it depends on this database condition service healthy. We also have to say wait for it to be healthy at the same time. Otherwise, it won't really wait for this to be done, and it will be very confusing of like, why isn't it actually like doing what I tell it to? I know it doesn't make any sense, but just add that command in. Okay, so docker compose up --wait. We should be good. I'm going to full screen this so we can see all this output. Now, because I'm not doing, let's see, what are you, services, depends on database. Okay, so we have an error. Must be one of the following: service started, service healthy, or service completed successfully. I have this service healthy, but it's supposed to be service _ healthy. But it gave us a nice error message that told us exactly what it's supposed to be. So let's change that there and try this again. Docker compose up --wait. Now this is going to take over our main screen, or our main terminal, because we didn't put a -d, because we can again use Docker compose in daemon mode. And now we can see that this is, it builds the image for us. So we don't have to worry about like the Docker build command anymore. It will just do this for us behind the scenes. And you notice that we didn't give it a name of like what to name the image. It takes the name based upon the folder that we're in. So we're in this Express CRUD folder. It's going to create it, I think, called Express CRUD app or something like that. It doesn't really matter to me because all I care about is that it's working. We can see, okay, so it created a network for us. That was created. It created a container Express CRUD database 1, and it's currently working through the health check. And container Express CRUD app 1 is started. But it was like waiting and it was not going, but then this became healthy and now this is healthy. And so we're good to go, but it crashed immediately and didn't stay up. So that's not great. So what's going on with that? So we need to run, is it Docker compose PS? You're running, that's here. You're running up. Oh, it is up. Okay, never mind. It runs in daemon mode by default. Okay, so let's try actually running this. So we're going to do a curl HTTP. We want to get the TAS, but we have to make sure it's going from 4001. Get address info, EI again, Express CRUD app. So it can't, it's having trouble connecting to the database. Oh, and you know why? Because I didn't name it the exact same thing that it's named inside of the Docker file. So that is something for us to be aware of. For example, if we open up our Docker file, this environment variable is assuming that we've named the database Express CRUD PG. So I, at the very least, need to update and override this DB URI to be whatever we're setting inside of this compose. Let's do that. Let's overwrite that. So app environment, I want DB URI, and then you're going to be, let's just copy what you are. So Postgres, okay, username Postgres, that's fine. Keyboard cat should be fine, that's the same. But Express CRUD, it's not the same anymore because this is now just database. So we want to just name you database and then connect to Postgres. Excellent. Now I need to down this first and then we can rerun this. So we're going to do a Docker compose. Let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Docker compose down, and it will stop everything, but it won't delete the volumes. The volumes will always stay up unless you explicitly tell it when you do a down command to delete that. That way your data remains. Okay, so it removed the network, it removed the two containers, and it deleted them. Great. It also keeps the image for rebuilding the containers for speed purposes. You can also, with an option, tell it to rebuild those. All right, let's try this again. Do Docker compose up -- wait. This will run and be happy. Or at least, hopefully it should be happy. Now that health check doesn't worry about the database, right? So it thinks everything is fine, but when you try to connect the database, that's when things don't work out super well. It is possible in code, it does take some code to write a smart health check. So basically you can just say, hey, did like a command that was supposed to run, did that fail? Let's go ahead and make sure that future health checks return false. That is not something you can automatically do with Docker. That is something you'd have to do in the actual code for whatever server you're running. All right, everything looks healthy. Let's try this again. So we're gonna do our curl command again to HTTP localhost 4001 tasks. And this time it works. Everything is good. We've overridden that, whatever it's called, the Docker command. We've overridden the environment variable to point to the correct location. And that's great. And I think that's potentially all we need. Now, if, for example, we like our Docker database wasn't set up properly, we could override a command to maybe like do the connects migrate run up thing first. So that would be under app. You can override the command like this command and then just write whatever the command is going to be here. So if I wanted to do something like npx migrate, npx connects migrate, migrate up, and then like and something else, that would work. The other thing is, and then perhaps the better way to do it would be in like the package.json, for example, we have a Docker dev, which that would run this connects migrate up, but then before also running just our nodemon to like start the app, we could just run docker dev up. So we want our command to be npm run docker, what was it called again? Docker underscore dev. And this should also work. Let's go ahead and rerun this. So docker compose down. You do have to like let this run up or down. And then everything else should be pretty much the way you would expect them to be working with Docker. So go ahead and bring this back up again. And everything will be exactly as expected. So that is Docker Compose. Now, at this point in time, you don't need to share with your coworkers how to how to create the database container, how to create your how to build your image. You could just share the project, which has this compose.yaml file in it, and share one command: docker compose up -- wait. And you can throw that into maybe your package.json under a script to just auto run that for yourself. And that way, nobody needs to know how this works. They just need to know one very simple command, and then just everything works automatically. And that's it. That's Docker Compose. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye. Let's see. Have everybody, and also the Better Owen. Thank you for the subscription. Don't worry about don't worry about that. Not your bad. That was me forgetting that the audio was still on for those, and I had apparently last night turned the speakers way up in there, but I think that I paused around it enough that I can cut that out when I'm creating the video. So I think it'll be fine. Also, Super Cooper, hello. Oh, you didn't know that Docker dash compose is boomer stuff? Immediately renamed my Docker compose YAML file. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I didn't realize that at all. And like when I did the original Rust U and then Rust Axum courses, I didn't know that. I was just going based upon what I knew, which was the Docker dash compose, which is totally boomer stuff. And it's like, okay, you need to use the Docker dash compose. I tried it with the Docker space compose. It's not compatible. They changed the format. So I would need to change it around. And then, but after I deployed it, I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Java guy, hello. How are you doing today? When will this course be released? Probably in a few weeks. Probably in a few weeks. That being said, I've been recording these videos, so if you're willing to dive through the last few live streams where I've like been building this on YouTube, then you can essentially get the content of the course. I sort of joke that it's my free tier, that you have to like dig through like just all the live stream craft that comes with live streaming to find it. Or you could just wait for a few weeks and then pay me, and then you don't have to worry about that. So it's pay for laziness. I don't know. I don't know what pay for nicety. I don't know what the word would be for it. It's not pay to win. It's pay to learn. Okay, so we have that. That's good. Oh, I went to bring you back. Also, I don't know why it worked with that volume. Did I name it the same volume? I must have named the same volume that I had before, and it reused it, which already had all the stuff in there. That must have been what I did. That's why it worked when it wasn't supposed to. But that's fine. It doesn't really matter. I still covered the thing they're supposed to. Okay. Final thing. And this section. Docker Compose Watch. This one's a fun one. Docker Compose Watch is brand new. It got released. It got pulled out of beta earlier this month. So this is like the new hotness in the Docker world. And I remember reading an email from Docker saying like, hey, go ahead and use this now. It's available. It's pretty cool. It makes things much faster when developing on a Mac and Windows system. I don't think that you're really going to see huge differences in speed on a Linux system. And that's mostly because of the way that Docker works on a Mac or Windows system. On Mac and Windows, it installs a virtual machine. And then it runs sort of Docker inside of that behind the scenes. You never really notice it yourself. But a virtual machine doing a volume mount between your host computer and the virtual machine is really slow. It like slows everything down. On a Linux system, it doesn't use a virtual machine at all. It just uses the Linux kernel that you have, which is therefore there is like the speed hit that you get is like minuscule. Like you barely won't notice it. You won't notice it unless you like share a ton of volumes. Yeah, so bleeding edge. All right, Docker Compose Watch objectives. By the oh, we need to actually write those. Okay, so use Docker compose watch to auto update, no, to sync files, to sync code between your computer and the containers and the container. And I think that's it. This took us like half a day to figure out. And there's sort of like there's not a lot of caveats. There's like some things to sort of be aware of. Docker Compose Watch, objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to use Docker Compose Watch to sync code between your computer and the container. Content. Starting in January 2024, Docker Compose added the watch config. This allows us to move away from mounting our local volume to the application container when developing. Since we won't have a volume bind, the changes will be faster and take less resources. We'll probably see improved speeds on Mac and Windows devices, but Linux systems should see some improvement. There are two things we need to add in order to make watch work. 1. Copy in our code from the Docker file so that all of the files and folders are present when the containers are first started. I don't know for certain, but I think that in Markdown, if you just use the same number over and over again, it just like auto actually updates and it doesn't care what number we have here. At least that's what happens in GitHub Docker, GitHub Markdown. So I'm just keeping this as 1.1. Replace the volume bind mount with a develop watch config. We'll be using the ExpressCRUD application as an example here. Okay, Docker file. We're starting with a Docker file that looks like, and so we have the previous one we had. We'll need to copy in the code when the image is created. We can do this with the copy config. Since the user code will be running the code we need to make sure that it owns this code, we'll use the copy chown code command to copy in all the files and folders in the same directory as the Docker file and set their user and group to code. We need to do this after creating and switching to the user. Compose. Now that our Docker image will have the code copied into it, we can add the watch to the compose.yaml file and remove the volume bind. Here's what we're starting with. So we have our Docker compose file. We'll remove the volumes object and replace it with a watch object. The path is telling Docker Compose where to watch for file changes and which files to sync into the container. This is relative to where the compose.yaml file is located, so in this case, we're using dot to sync everything. The action is what will happen when a file is changed. Since our container command runs nodemon behind the scenes, any file changes will cause the server to automatically restart. If you don't have a command that automatically restarts the server on a file change, you might need the action sync plus restart. Finally, target is where the code is syncing to in the container. The copy command in the Docker file is copying all the files and folders to /code, and the workdir is /code, so we're matching that. Now we can start up a Docker Compose system with the command docker compose watch. This will do an up for us and start watching for file changes. Probably better, we'll remove the volumes object in the ExpressCRUD section since there's also the global one. Which one is that? That's up here, right? Oh, yeah. We can have, that's in here. Okay, so we'll need to copy in okay, so then the volume command is no longer needed since we won't be mounting our code into the container. Would be a good idea to remove this. Good call. Okay, so compose. Okay, so we do that. We remove the volumes and replace it with the watch object. Oh, this too. But I was talking about the explanation when you're adding the watch section. There's 2 volume keys in the compose. Oh, I think. Are you talking about like the volumes here? I think this is where I'm starting with, right? This is yeah, here's where we're starting with. And so we have our volumes here. We'll remove the volumes object. Okay, so we'll remove the volumes object from the Express CRUD service. Okay, that's what you're thinking. Remove the volumes object from the Express CRUD service and replace it with the watch object. Okay, so we do that. Now we can start up our Docker Compose system with the command Docker Compose watch. This will do an up for us and start watching for file changes. At this point, we can edit our files in any editor we want. If a file changes or a new one is created, then it will be synced into the code directory in the container. If we use the Docker Compose up command, our system will work as expected. However, we won't be able to make any changes to the code since there isn't a volume bind mount. All right, excellent. There we go. Will it also rebuild the Docker file or compose YAML if it's changed? You mean, oh no, it won't. It will not. It just is only watching the stuff inside. That's the only thing it's doing. Where is the watch? That's under services. This one looks like it's under proper, oh, volumes watch? No. Where'd it go? Togglebit, hello. Raid and Run. Well, welcome, Togglebit. Welcome, Raiders. Rated mid-sentence too? Oh no, I hate it when like the timer runs out and you don't realize. Anyways, welcome everybody. How are you all doing today? How was Togglebit's stream? And what was he working on? Let's see. Welcome, Ranbone, Privan, the Halu. We are currently working on creating a course for Docker. Specifically, it's sort of like an introductory course, like going through all of Docker. It's a getting up and running, being able to like build things. Like initially, it was the idea was it was going to be like a Docker for web developers, but I sort of just rebranded it to Docker, like Introduction to Docker. And we are getting ready to record a lesson that's going to be part of the course for Docker Watch, which is a brand new feature in Docker Compose. Out of curiosity, how many of you use Docker? Are you familiar with it? Have you used it? Do you know what it is? Use Docker on your Mac server. It's AI. I mean, you can run AI in a Docker. Supercomputer gotta go. Don't forget to mute sounds this time. I will do my best to mute the sounds, to turn my speaker down. Thank you for that. Okay, a little bit, Scott. It's the only thing you know about. So Docker isn't itself AI, but it allows you to run, like, imagine that it's sort of like running a mini operating system inside of your computer, and in that operating system you can run any commands, anything you want. And so, for example, with Ollama, which runs like an LLM, you can run that inside of Docker. It's I think a popular way to do that. Used it, was trying to figure out why my npm token wasn't recognized in it. Oh, yeah, there are some weird things with it. Where is watch? Why can't I find it in this list? Is it not in? Am I just like missing it over and over and over again? Okay, we're gonna have to search for it. Oh, Scout Watch? No, Docker Compose Watch. That's what we want. Cool. This is great documentation here. Where did I find the document? Oh, I was probably under manuals. Describing this as a mini OS is begging for the question, what's the difference with a VM? Yes, that's a good question. And the biggest difference, a virtual machine fully isolates your system, like everything that you have, like your kernel of your operating system and the Docker operating system, like what's running in the containers. So for example, if you have a Linux system and you're running that and you run Docker, Docker shares the kernel, it shares the memory, it shares the CPU. It doesn't isolate them and like carve a chunk off and say, this is it's like, it's like, it's this now. Which both is good and bad. Like for the good parts of it, you get an immediate, there's no immediate penalty for starting up, like for even just having Docker up and running. It's not until you run the containers it's like, okay, it's now going to use this memory. It's not going to use this part of the CPU. If you have a true VM, it's going to start using that right away. Now on a Mac and Windows system, it doesn't have a Linux kernel, which is what Docker kind of needs. So it actually runs a VM behind the scenes for you and then runs Docker from that. So it gets a little bit murky, like even gets more murky there, because you have a VM, you don't even realize you have a VM unless like, and then things are doing what you expect it to. It's also the reason why Docker is so much slower on a Windows system and a Mac system than a Linux system, because you have that penalty of a VM. which is one reason why Docker Watch is so exciting, because it makes things faster. Because if you do a volume bind mount between a directory on your host system and a Docker container in a Linux system, it's super fast because you don't have a VM that you're like opening a hole to and volume binding, mounting, whatever. That's like super fast. You're not going to really get a speed penalty. However, with a VM, you do. It's a pretty big speed penalty. And just having the volume bind there is the speed penalty. Like, you already get it. Like, things are just slower now just because of that. Watch allows us to remove it. I'm not aware of any BSD jails. That would be interesting to see if that does work. I've never really looked into it though. Oh, is it well, hypervisors, don't hypervisors run a VM behind the scenes? Like they're I always like to imagine like the hypervisors are like supervisors, right? For VMs. Like they're running and managing multiple VMs behind the scenes. But I am old school, so I might have missed like an update from Docker where like they switched away from VMs, but I thought that's what happens when you install Docker Home, Docker, what is it called? Docker Desktop. It at least on Windows and a Mac, it installs its stuff also for you. It's all murky. Yeah, I know. So I'm not actually really going over that. That's out of scope for this course. This course is really just like usage, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Okay, here is the information for Docker Compose Watch, which they just call this Compose Watch, not Docker, of course. And then here's how to use it inside the services file, which I don't understand. I couldn't find this. Oh, it's under develop. That's why it's under develop inside. Okay. In the Docker file reference, there should be a develop section. Oh, this is the Docker file. Okay, under develop, then we go to the development section, and then here's where we see watch is the only thing in the development section, which I guess is an implication that they might change it and there's more things that are going to be in develop in the future. The TLDR, it runs better on Linux. Yes, absolutely. Which is one of the reasons why, like, if somebody tells you, especially if they're coming from Windows or a Mac, if they tell you never run Docker in production, it's so slow, they might not realize how much faster Docker is on an actual like native Linux system. Okay. All right, so services, we'll go to develop. We're good to go there. Okay, we already have this set up. I have the Docker Watch section open here too, which has like everything we need. And I think we have everything we need to do. I'll probably like be referencing my previous article that I wrote for how to do that. As the Nightbot message just showed up in Twitch, says, I'm going to be recording this as a video that's going to go into the course, which means that I am going to kind of pay attention to Twitch chat. That means that if you have a question, if you have a comment, I will probably notice it. If it's relevant, I'll do my best to sort of work it into the video. Otherwise, I'll respond to it after we're done. I don't know how long this is going to take because Docker Watch is actually kind of takes a while. It takes a bit. Like you have to update several different things to get it to work, and I need to walk our way through it. The other thing is we have 8 minutes until ad starts. Let me change that. Snooze. Oh, it won't let me like snooze all the snoozes. Oh wait, no, I can. I'm gonna use all the snoozes right now. There. Okay. Ads won't start for another 22 minutes or so, which should give us time to record all this. Hopefully this won't be over a 20-minute video, but it could be. And this will probably be our last recording of the day. So with that, so where do I want to start? Probably close all of these things, probably here. We have you open, you're running. Okay, so probably here's where we want to start. And I'll just mention the brand new feature and we'll just go over how to use that. Okay. Let's see how many takes this takes. And turned off my speakers so we can't accidentally get a whole bunch of noises in there too. Let's go. There's a brand new feature in Docker that released earlier this year, when I'm recording this, in January 2024, called Docker Compose Watch. And this allows us to be a little bit faster, at least on Macs and Windows systems, where there's more of a sort of like a VM magic happening behind the scenes with Docker, to have our code sync into the container run. So normally, let's take a look at our Docker file. Not our Docker file, our Compose file. We have to have, for our app, this volume, where we're mounting our code into the volume. And it turns out that on Macs and Windows systems, where there's this sort of virtual machine thing happening behind the scenes, that's, well, actually quite slow. Now, it might feel fast to us right here, but as our code grows, that becomes slower. And if we need more volumes than just one, that slowness will start to become quite apparent. Now, Linux systems don't have to worry about this nearly as much, but they can still benefit, have a little bit of speed benefit from Docker Compose Watch. So let's go ahead and set this up. Now, there's two things that we need to do for this. We need to first copy all of our code into the Docker image when we build it. And that's because Docker Compose Watch does a sync with whatever the directory we're going to pass it. And that means that the files need to be present there already. Otherwise, it's not going to know to update them. Now, the way we can do that is in our Docker file. So currently we have this volume. We can just get rid of this. We're going to do a copy command. I'm going to do this below our user because we need to make sure that this happens as our user. We need to do the yes, we need to do this as our, no, we don't need to do this as a user. We can do this right here. So the copy command is going to copy a file or folder from our home directory. So we want to copy our source directory, and apparently we can just chown it at the exact same time. So that's chown our user. Well, we have code, and then we want to our source directory. Well, it's going to be just whatever our current directory is, wherever we built this at. And then we want to put this into /code. So that should work. Let me double check my notes here. I believe so, yes. And then that should be everything we need for the Docker file. We removed the volume, that's good. Now, if we go to our compose file, we can remove this volume altogether because we don't need it. Instead of a live volume, we need to use this sync thing. Now, this is under the develop section, which let's see if VS Code knows about it. So if I just under here do develop, this is new enough for me right now that the extension isn't aware of the develop section. So let's go to the documentation. So in the services, we're going to find develop, and you notice we have to go to the development section. They wrote an entire section for this. So we click into there and it gives us an example. So it's gonna be develop watch. The only thing in here available right now is watch. To me, having an entire section for this tells me that there's more planned for this. So keep your eye on it. There might be some more cool stuff that Docker is gonna add in for us. So we want develop watch. So let's just add these in one at a time. So develop watch. And then we give it this one thing, which is an array, but it has multiple things in this object. So it's an array of objects, essentially. So that's going to be an array, and we're going to have the path. So what do we want to... Where is it syncing from on our host system? So our path is going to be, well, the current file, right? So we want just dot. Now the action, what we want it to do. So in this case, this shows sync. Down here, I believe we have our choices here. We have rebuild, sync, and then restart, sync and restart. Rebuild is going to rebuild the entire service every time that a file changes, which in this case is going to be a little bit overkill. Sync just syncs the files and then doesn't worry about anything else. And then sync plus restart syncs the files and then restarts the service. Now, because we have Nodebon running, that is already looking for file changes and is going to restart the server behind the scenes. All we need to do is sync in this case. So our action is going to be sync. Target, where is this going to go inside of the Docker container? So target is going to be /code. And anything that we want to ignore. Do we want to ignore anything at all? In this case, I don't think so. We already have everything in there. Now, theoretically, we could ignore the node modules and then set up some script to automatically do an npm install when we first start up the command, start up the container. We don't have that right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and not ignore anything. And then I think we're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and do a Docker compose down to remove the one that we already have up and running. And we're going to have a brand new command we're going to run to get everything going, which is Docker compose watch. So instead of Docker compose up watch or something, it's just Docker compose watch. It builds the images. Basically, it looks exactly the same as what we had already. It still runs. It does the wait for us behind the scenes. And once everything is up and healthy, we should start being able to use it. The other thing, though, is that this is going to take over a terminal window. There's, as far as I can tell, not really any way for us to get around that, but it actually can be good because we can see immediate feedback for when something is updated. So we have down here this message. It's action sync for path, and it's now watching for us. And we can actually see it's watching this entire directory, which is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another terminal here. Let's bring this to be a little bit bigger. Get rid of our sidebar. Let's do our curl command to make sure everything is working the way we expect it to. Okay, we have no tasks in a database. Perfect. And let's also check our health check, because that's maybe something a little bit easier for us to update. So health check. All right, we have that. I am healthy. I am going to keep this up so we can see this window down here. And we're going to open up app.js. And here's that I am healthy message. If I update you by adding, let's say, a bunch of exclamation marks and hit save, we see, let's see, cannot open file exists. What happened? Syncing app after changes were detected. Okay. So that works. That works there. Cannot open file exists. It copying files, exit to, and it didn't update there. Okay. We're gonna have to, man, I was hoping this would work the first try. It didn't. It didn't work. Okay. What happened here? Action sync for path, express CRUD, syncing app after changes were detected. Cannot open file exists. Isn't it like what it's supposed to be? Like, of course the file exists. That's like the point. Is it because I didn't put in the Docker file this copy down here? All right, let's try this again. The lovely wait for the health checks to pass. Okay, there we go. So we have you running. You're on the right path. Yes, that is the correct path we're in. Okay. If we took a look at our health check. Okay, so we have the exclamation points because we started with them this time, and now I want to get rid of them. Hit save. Failure. What went wrong? What did I do? Did I do something different here? I don't think so. All right, what did I do in the Docker? Let's see, path dot action sync target slash code. Okay. I mean, that should all be fine. Cannot open file exists. All right, let's jump into this. So if I want to exec into, what do we call this? App. So pwd, so /code lssal. Okay, we have everything in here. It didn't like come into some weird directory or something else like that. It's all owned by code. The directory is owned by root. That could be a problem. But you're not telling me it's a permission error. It's telling me that syncing app after changes were detected cannot open file exists. That's interesting. Now, let's say I did update you, and we say we do a user add. Oh. We have to run makedir /code, run user add, run chown code /code. How about that? Maybe it is a permission issue with the actual, oh, because I removed the volume, so it didn't create it. And so there's weirdness there. Maybe? Okay, so you're up and running. Let's do our curl command. So we have I am healthy, and we update you to be bang, 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 bang. Save you. That was it. That was it. Okay. So we need to make sure we update that in here. Okay, so we're starting a Docker file that looks like this. We'll need a copy in the code when the image is created. We can do this with the copy command. We do that. Okay, the volume code command is no longer needed since we won't be mounting into the container. It would be a good idea to remove this. However, the user user add command expects the code directory to exist. We'll need to create it before running the user add command, and also change the permissions of the directory to be owned by code. So that's going to be this run mkdir code, user add chown. So, okay. Then the rest of this should work as expected. That was the big change. Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and change you back to here. We want to volumes, code that, and then the Docker file. Volume code. Oh, also, for the article, it doesn't actually need to be below. That's a lie. Since the user code will be running and so we need to make sure that owns this code will use the copy command. We do not need to do this after creating and switching to the user. That's a lie, because that chown makes it owned by the user. So perfect. Okay. So write that. That's good. You're back to what you used to be. You're back to what you used to be. You're back to what you used to be. Documentation. You're back to here. And I need to Docker compose. Okay, so I can actually just pretend that this is running still, and we'll just do a Docker compose down. There. And I'll open up that side window again. All right. And I've done all my snoozes. Unfortunately, Twitch is going to run a 3-minute ad block to try to like turn off all the pre-rolls in 1 minute and or so. So we're going to do the recording for this after that's done. So I think it's time for, I guess, like a quick stretch break. So I guess 4-minute break starting right now. I will be back shortly. All right, 1.5 minutes or so until everybody's back. And then we'll be good to go. All right. I think we know what we're doing. Will be take 2. I should git commit this. So let's see, we recorded lessons for Docker. All right. I think we're about ready to start. Twitch says that you're all back, so welcome back. Sorry about the ads. Hopefully there weren't too many of them. Hopefully you're able to take a break during it. But we are going to go ahead and get started with this recording for Docker Compose Watch Take 2. Now we know what the problem was and we can avoid it. And we updated the instructions, so everything should be synced up and working properly. All right. What's the chance that it's gonna work this time? All right, let's do this. We now have everything set up with Docker Compose, where it just starts up our entire ecosystem of containers and we can develop with it. There is one, I guess it's not really an issue, but with the volume bind mounting on Linux and on Linux computers, that should be pretty fast. On Mac and Windows computers, it might be a little bit slower. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary for this depending upon how fast of a system you have, but Docker behind the scenes is using either something like a VM or a VM that it sort of sets up for you. And volume bind mounting into a VM is a lot slower than just mounting volume bind mounting into the container itself directly. That's one of the reasons why Docker on Linux feels so much faster than Docker pretty much anywhere else. However, Docker has released a brand new feature as of January 2024, which is called Docker Compose Watch. And this allows us to sync files and folders from our host machine into a container without a volume bind mount. This should be much faster and basically give us exactly the same experience. However, it's going to be a little bit to set up and make work the way we expect it to. Let's go ahead and walk through this process. So first off, we're going to have to make a change to our Docker file. First things first, we no longer need this volume because we're not going to have a volume mount. We're going to be doing this copy. Oh, and we have a kitty cat joining us. Hey, Zilby. Yeah, hang out down there. Okay, so because we removed this, that directory is no longer going to be created, but we're creating this user add that's assuming that this folder exists. So we need to create it. We do need to create it. So we're going to do run make dir /code. Now it's running this as the root user, which is not necessarily what user add expects. So we're going to write after this run chown to change owner for code. And so we're going to create the directory code, create this user, and then change ownership of /code to be this new user along with the group code that's automatically created by user add. Perfect. And I think that's the only thing we need to update with our Docker file. Oh, wait, no, that's not correct. The way that watch works is that it syncs the files and folders. But if the files and folders don't exist already, it doesn't know to sync them. It'll only do that for new files and folders that are created. So we're going to need to use the copy command to copy them in. Now, this can happen anytime after we have our code directory. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it at the end before the user. So we're going to use copy source destination. And actually, I want there. We want this copy chown user group. So the user group is going to be code. We want this -- chown here to chown and change owner of all the files and folders that are coming into the this directory. So we don't have to do it again as another line after this is done. And then I want our from, so it's going to be the current directory that the Docker file is in, to /code. And that's it. This is all the changes we need to make to the Docker file. We're now ready to go. Now we need to make changes to the compose file because this is called Docker compose watch. We can't use this with Docker file on its own. It has to be used from compose. So first of all, let's go ahead and do a Docker compose down. Docker compose down to start shutting everything off. I'm going to go ahead and close our terminal while that runs in the background. We no longer are going to need the volume here for the app. Instead, there's a brand new section for the services. In fact, the extension for Docker, at least on my computer as of this time right now, isn't even aware of this. So I'm not going to get any help from VS Code. So let's go take a look at the documentation. In the services, there is a brand new config command in the service called develop right here. And all this is telling us is like, hey, go to the development section. So if we click on that, there's only one thing in here right now, which is watch. And this is actually pretty exciting because it means that Docker is planning on adding more things to this develop section, or at least I would expect it to, because this is now a pretty short file. It feels like they're preparing it for a lot more stuff in the future to come in. So that's what I'm hoping. So the way this works is we're going to do develop as an object, and then watch as an object under that, and then the config for watch. So let's set that up. This can be anywhere underneath the app. So we have develop object, watch as another object, and then an array of, well, an object. And we have the various keys here. So path. This is going to be the path on our local system that is going to look for and grab the files and directories. So path is going to be dot, just where we are right now. Next up, action. This is going to be what to do when Docker determines that a file has changed in our local system. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can see under action here, we have three choices. We have rebuild, and in rebuild, it's going to rebuild the entire service again once something changes, which you might need depending upon what type of thing you're building. However, in our case, we don't need to do that. In fact, all we need to do is just sync in the files, and then it's going to auto restart the server based upon that, which matches what sync here says. There's also a sync and restart. If we didn't have an auto restart whenever a file changed in our server, then we would need this. But all we need is just sync. So this can be action, sync. And then let's see, after that, we need a target. Where is it going to sync these into inside the container? So target, and in this case, we know that they're going to /code. Finally, we have an ignore. Is there anything that we want to ignore here? And in this case, no, we don't. Anything new, anything that changes, we want it to sync in. Now, if we were to ignore node modules, that would make things a little bit faster because there's less files for it to copy in and sync. But we don't have like encode set up to handle, like do an npm install automatically for us. Perhaps that's like something, I'll leave that as an exercise for you. It's something that you can maybe like script and determine like, okay, something changed, go ahead and reinstall. Maybe that's where the either rebuild or sync plus restart could take effect. Let's go ahead and add that in. So target, actually, we don't need a ignore at all. Just not having it here will be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and reopen our terminal here. It's successfully done the Docker compose down. So we're going to use the new command, which is Docker compose watch. And this is going to do an up for us behind the scenes, and it's also going to do the dash wait for us. So it's going to wait for everything to become healthy. So there it is. It rebuilt the Docker file, a new image for us. It's created the network. It's created the Express CRUD database. So it's created the container for the Postgres database. It's waiting for that to become healthy, and then it will start the app. So all we can do now is just wait for that to run. There we go. And we get this message saying action sync for path, our path, and then express CRUD. So this matches exactly where we are, and then the files that we expect to go in. Okay, everything's looking good so far. I'm going to go ahead and create another terminal window over here. And we're going to do our curl command to our health check. Okay, we see the I am healthy. Everything's looking good so far. Let's go ahead and make a file change and see it sync over here. So I'm going to open up app.js. And in app.js on line 14, we have this I am healthy. I'm going to add a bunch of exclamation marks, and we're going to hit save. And as soon as we do, we see syncing app after changes were detected. And then it even shows me the app from my computer that's going to be synced in. And then that's it. That's all it did. Now, if we come over here and we run our curl command again, which is kind of behind me, let me refresh that. We now see I am healthy, exclamation points. It changed, it restarted the server. Everything is good. And it ran pretty fast. Now, this is a small one. We probably wouldn't see it run too slow here anyways, but if we had a really big application, we had a lot of files, that might have taken a little bit longer for it to restart. And that's it. That's how we can now sync in our code. Our Zilby is wanting to snuggle a bit, so I'm gonna end here. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Zilby, you wanna join me? You're about to rename Pet the Cat, but he gets you get it for free? Yeah, you do. Okay, what do you... Okay, Zilby. So Zilby is our, if you haven't seen him before, he's our stream cat. He's my boss. He's our manager. He likes to make sure that things are on the up and up. He's probably coming and telling me that my shift here on the stream is done and that it's time for me to go up and feed him and pet him and play with him and not just sit here and hang out with all of you. So that's probably what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and mark this as completed. He is enjoying the pets though. Okay, let's see. I want different compose. Where does that go? I want, oh, it's over here. Except I don't have a hand. I have one hand. Nope. You're there. Full screen, please. Oh, where, how do I go back? It's like, up. You okay? All right, Sylvie's done. And this was at 06:35. Whew, a lot of things today. Okay, so we did, I think starting from here, did all of these videos today, which is what, 6 videos today. Not too bad. Which is excellent. Let's go ahead, quit out. Let's save all of you. Let's see, recorded videos. I'll push those up. And then I want to save Express CRUD too. Recorded, compose, watch video. Push that up too. And I think we're good to go on this. I don't think I need anything else pushed up for you. Let's see, what else is going on with this? I don't think I have anything. Team Master, hello, how are you doing today? You want to learn how to work with Docker? You just got in live. Am I using Nginx with Node? I am not. So in this case, it's just running Express behind the scenes. And Express just runs its own server, and then I have that running on port 3000 in the container, and then I bind the port. Well, I bind a variety of ports from my host system into that container. So I think in the most recent example, I bound port 4001 to that specific container, so I can just curl to that. Yeah, so like it's possible to use Nginx to like basically forward to like different ports, but there's not really that much of a need in this specific case, especially for like local development purposes. Nginx on production though, that is pretty important. So let's see. I don't think anything else. Oh, and you just got in the live. Oh, we're about to end. So sorry about that. I'm going to be okay. So we're not done with the course yet. We have some more things to work on here. Nginx is for load balancing, right? It can be. It is. The more appropriate term for it would be a reverse proxy. So what it allows you to do is send messages from different applications, like from different domains to Nginx, to a server. And then Nginx will look at that domain and say, ooh, you're actually attempting to hit brooksbuilds.com / whatever, like / Docker course. I'm going to send you to this application over here. This go to this port, like forward it to this port. So it's proxying for us. Oh, you're going to, I don't know, blog.brooksbuilds.com. I want you're going to go to like this other port instead on the same exact server. So it's one server, multiple applications hosting it. That's something that you can definitely do. Can you watch the live, or do you have to be sub? Oh no, you can definitely watch. And then the VODs are available on YouTube immediately, right away. I do plan on cutting them, but I'm like I'm like a month and a half. I'm at least a full month behind on doing that. I need to figure out like a better way to keep on top of that, because I am slow. I am also learning how to do cutting, and like I'm doing bare minimum editing, but it's still a learning process. So as I get better, I'll get faster. But yeah, if you want to take a look, I'm streaming this on YouTube, and then the VODs just immediately become available. And then if you want to watch the entire course as I've been creating, if you take a look at my uncut live stream playlist, you can find just look for the one like the titles where it's like Docker course in there, and that's where like from the very beginning we start creating everything. So step one, we went through and we figured out what the course is gonna be with the limitations of it. Then we wrote articles for it, and now we're creating videos for it, which is the second to the last step. And then eventually I'll be making this available for to sell on my LMS. And I sort of joke that the VODs are my free tier, because like you can watch through and get everything from the course there. You just have to go through all the live stuff. So it's more of a pain. Okay, so that being said, let's see. Coding Garden is streaming. CJ is building an application in SvelteKit, it looks like, and doing Pomodoros. Let's see. Sam Griffin has 640 viewers right now. Sam Griffin is building Vexilla, so that is a lot of viewers. I'm going to send you all over to Coding Garden. So let's do I guess all of you on Twitch over to Coding Garden. I believe that Coding Garden is also streaming on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, you can go find Coding Garden's channel and watch there and join there. Let's do a raid for Coding Garden. Invalid username. Okay, raid. There we go. Okay, much better. Let's see. Any other things? No more streams for the rest of the week. The rest of this week, I'll be back live on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. On Monday, we're continuing our project where we're building the Git in Rust using Code Crafters, and we're getting really close to the end, I think. Hopefully we only have a few more days of that left, but we're finding out a lot more about how to do like an actual Git clone from GitHub, which is a lot of fun. And then the Docker course is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you're more interested in this, I'll be back Tuesday next week, and I start streaming around 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time. And that's all I've got. So thank you, everybody. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye.